Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric here with Iraq Veteran 8888. Today we've got another exploratory gunsmithing video for you, and we are going to be talking about the Argentine Ballester Molina service pistol, and we're going to be taking this gun apart down to the smallest piece and sort of diagnosing an issue that I'm having with it. I found this gun at a local gun shop. Figured I'd pick it up and do a review for you guys because, you know, I like oddball stuff, and this is a very oddball gun. It's not a true 1911. It's very different. And you could call it a very early Bursa. These were made from like the late 30s to the mid 50s. So really, really cool Argentine service pistol. Really cool part of Argentina's history. And we're having an issue, and the gun is basically failing to fire completely. When the hammer drops, the firing pin is just not setting off the primer. So it's either the firing pin is broken or there's something inhibiting the movement. If I cock this hammer and look, there's definitely some rust and corrosion just frothing out of the hole right there where the firing pin goes through the back plate there on the slide. So it could just be some corrosion causing the issue. We're going to look into that. A lot of guys have been asking us too. You know, we used to instruct at SDI. I say we, but me specifically. I used to be an instructor at SDI, and I could definitely recommend. I mean, if you guys are looking for any type of education, further education related to gunsmithing, SDI has some really good programs. If you want to check out what they have going on. I don't instruct there anymore, but I know some people that might be something they want to look into. So yeah, let's get on with it. In terms of SDI, they're a great school. I mean, I've instructed for them. I wish I still could, but these videos are really the most direct way that I can help people in terms of diagnosing problems. So expect more of these videos where we're just kind of taking a problem and trying to fix it and diagnose it. So I'm just kind of bringing you guys along for the ride. And anyway, yeah, let's get to it. Pretty easy. All right, guys, we're going to be pulling this Ballester Molina apart. It really does not share a lot of parts with the 1911, and that's why I thought this would be a fun video for some of you guys to see some of the foreign military pistols that are out there. One distinct difference in the frame you can easily see right out the gate is the very deliberate angle of the beaver tail in the back there. You can see it's got, you know, a little bit more real estate there. There are some design differences. The grip panels are different. The magazines are interchangeable with the 1911 service pistol, so it does just take a standard 1911 magazine. We're going to set it off to the side. We're going to make sure, obviously, that the firearm is unloaded. It is. The barrels are somewhat interchangeable with the 1911. At least I've heard they are. I wouldn't go grabbing a Ballester Molina barrel as my first choice to drop in a 1911, but they are compatible. We're going to go ahead and pull it apart. The disassembly of the gun is not unlike a 1911. In some forms, we're going to cock the hammer, put it on safe. We're going to grab this is a Wilson Combat bushing wrench, and we are going to remove the bushing. Okay, looks good there. We'll go ahead and remove the slide now that we've gotten the, let's see here. Oh, well, while we've got the tension off, we got to get the barrel link out of there. Duh. All right, separate the frame from the slide. We're going to set the frame off to the side for just a moment and deal with just the slide, guide rod, and recoil spring. We can see the recoil spring is definitely elongated a bit and probably needs to be replaced. I don't have one laying around to replace it with, so we're just going to let that lie, and it's going to be okay just for the purposes of test firing. The barrels on these things are actually pretty decent. I'm going to see if I can just get that lined up the way I want right there. There we go. So there's our bushing, and the barrel's kind of a tight fit. I'm going to pull it right out. You can see this kind of plum color on the barrel. Heat treating looks to be pretty nice. That's usually just a kind of byproduct of the heat treating process. There's one little like minor sort of fact about these guns. It's kind of cool, and I'll talk about it when we do the review video on it. But these guns were reportedly made out of captured German armor off of a frigate, or I don't know if it was like a battleship, but it might have been like a little frigate or small vessel that was a Nazi vessel during World War II, and got got sunk in shallow water, and they went out there and salvaged a bunch of the metal. And it is a story that these firearms were made out of captured metal off of old German ships. So that's kind of neat there. They appear to be well made. The barrel's pretty grungy. We're going to clean on that in a little bit. Let's get the whole gun apart first. It does have an internal extractor. Okay, so not the style that's like on the outside of the slide. It's an internal extractor. We're going to pull the little plate off the back and pull all the guts out of here. Should be pretty straightforward. And we're just going to put a little pressure on this firing pin. And it does move back and forth, and there is some like just rust frothing out of here. So I imagine that's probably going to be the culprit. Oh yeah. Yep. Yep. Definitely the culprit. Look at that. Okay. See all this rust? That's not good. It's kind of hard for you to see, but you can definitely see we got some rusty duct parts going on. Okay. Definitely rusty. All right, so that's probably why we're getting some light strikes and everything like that. So this slide is at this point more or less completely stripped. We could drive the rear side out, but I'm not going to do that. There's actually a hash mark right here that shows the alignment of the way that the sight was staked from the factory, and it doesn't appear to have ever been drifted or moved, so we're not going to bother removing that. And of course the front sight is more or less kind of fixed. So that slide is stripped. We're going to just move these parts out of the way, and we're going to move on to the frame. Now here is where there's some very drastic differences between the 1911 and the Ballester Molina. I'm just going to kind of talk as I work here, and we're going to remove the grip screws so we can get the grip frames off, grip panels. Now we obviously want to make sure that there's no splits or cracks or anything going on with these grip panels. You can see that there's a very distinctive style of grip panel on these particular guns versus a standard 1911. They are proprietary to the Ballester Molina, and you know, they kind of have a broom handle type appearance to them. All right, we turn the frame over, remove the other grip panels. And this video is meant to be kind of a help for anybody that might have encountered one of these guns and doesn't really understand the ins and outs. We're just trying to kind of educate people on the different stuff. And we do have some more videos planned in the near future where we're going to be pulling apart some odd milsurps and stuff. I know a lot of people really enjoyed the Martini Henry cleanup video, and a lot of folks have been asking us to do more of those types of videos, so don't worry, they are on the way. The grip panels look to be in pretty good shape. We're not even going to bother removing the screws from the grip panels, because those grip panels have probably swelled and contracted, and you know, the moisture has probably affected them a bit, and I don't want to go forcing anything in or out. I want to kind of let them stay in their natural setting there. So we're down to the frame. Okay. There's definitely some differences here. You can see that there's a transfer bar, and the pivot of the trigger is afforded by just a basic pin right here at the top of my finger. You can probably see that. The magazine catch is drastically different than a 1911. The sear and the way that the mainspring housing kind of works, there's not really a mainspring housing. You can see that the frame is just kind of there, and instead you've got a leaf spring inside of the frame, which is probably difficult to see, but it's down here, and a leaf spring just hooks in to a little stud inside of the frame, and it just puts spring pressure against the sear. That is really the hardest thing to get in and out of this gun. So we're going to go ahead and just kind of move on here and start tearing this thing apart. And I guess what we'll do is, since the hammer's already cocked, we'll remove the safety, pivot it up and back. You'll kind of find the sweet spot, and now your safety will come out. We'll squeeze the trigger and take the pressure off of the hammer itself. We'll grab us a set of little pliers here, and just like on a 1911, you've got a dual purposed spring here. One powers the barrel hinge pin, puts a little pressure against that to keep it from, moving around. And then the other end of it obviously is detent for the safety, to keep the safety in whatever position you decide to lock it in. And if you look at the safety, you can obviously see a few indentations where that plunger interacts with the safety. So not unlike a 1911 there. We're going to basically, what we want to do now, we'll go ahead and remove the magazine catch. Now this is going to be a little bit of a bear to show you, because the best thing to do is just take your block and take a punch and put it in there like that. And carefully, very, very carefully, put it against the safety button, okay? Apply pressure, push in, like this, unscrew it, just like I did right there. Okay, it fell down, there we go, okay? I'm gonna try not to move. All right, look at that. So we got the actual button captured. It just landed in the block. And then we've got our actual threaded button with our spring, and we can see that there's some crud and some rust there that is going to need to be attended to. So that's a good thing we pulled it apart. Now, I've had these guns apart before, and one thing I do want to mention about the trigger itself is that the transfer bar that is connected to the trigger is attached to the frame with this little skinny pin right here, and we can remove it, but there's really no point in doing it, because the transfer bar on this gun is actually one of those types of pins that the way that is attached to the trigger, it is actually one of those pins that is hard pressed into place and is dressed down and finished as it's dressed down. So it's not really a pin that is designed to be removed. So for the purposes of this video, it's not really going to be advantageous to us to even try to remove the trigger assembly, because there's spring pressure that keeps forward pressure. See, right now, there is spring pressure that maintains forward pressure on the trigger. And you can see that the trigger is attached to, basically pivots here, but is attached to a transfer bar that transfers that rearward energy directly to the sear and pushes it back and allows it to drop. So that's why I took this gun apart the way I did this way, so you can see the way that whole arrangement interacts with each other. So we could pull the trigger bar out, but there's really no point, because once I pull this pin out, this trigger will move forward a little bit and it'll expose. In fact, you can just about, even when the gun is like in this position right now, you can see where that particular pin on the bottom of the trigger, where the trigger bar connects to the trigger, you can see where it was hard pressed into place, dressed down, and just finished like that. So it's kind of basically finished like an entire part. So it's not really intended to be taken apart, so we're not going to take it apart. So we're going to leave that in the gun. We are going to take the mainspring out, the sear, and the hammer. And I'm not going to lie, it's a real bear to get it back in, but I am going to show you. So you basically have a leaf spring that connects against this little stud down here. I know it's probably hard to see, but it puts constant pressure on the sear, okay, and it pivots back and forth. There's a basically one-sided pin that comes in from this direction that we're going to have to push out, and when it's in the gun, it pokes out to the other side, and that doubles as the stop for your safety, okay? So we're going to go ahead and just push it out. And I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll push it out using a transfer punch, and that way we capture it, because that's how we're going to put it back together, is to capture it. Okay, so now the pin is out, all right, and there is most certainly one side that looks to be a little bit bigger than the other. We'll make sure we set it off to the side. And now this whole arrangement is captured with the transfer punch. So the way that you see this whole arrangement is how we are going to put the gun back together. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just allow the transfer punch to come out, and it's just going to go bink, and everything's going to kind of pop out. It wasn't quite as exciting as one would think, is it? In terms of the whole bink thing, but I swear it's there. Okay. So you can see now that because we removed the pin and the sear is now out of the way, now the hammer will just freely move back and forth. We'll take the gun, put it on this side right here, grab our action block and my punch, And I don't know where my actual gunsmithing hammer went, so I'm just going to give a couple of gentle raps with a nylon mallet. Don't tell anybody. Okay. Now this is another pin that's a real bear to get in and out, or another part rather. We've got a slotted pin. It can only go in and out one way out of the gun. And the hammer has a strut on the bottom that compresses a very, very stiff spring and a cup. So the whole mainspring housing only comes down to about right here, versus on a 1911 you've got a long strut that goes back and interfaces with a mainspring housing down here in the bottom of the gun. So all that is fixed, as you can see, and there is no real mainspring housing. In fact, you can even see here these two holes that are on the bottom of the frame. They're only there really for the purposes of it being a lightning cut, and that's really about it. Those holes serve no purpose other than to make the gun lighter. So that's a lightning cut. We're going to maintain pressure on this hammer so it doesn't shoot out, and you can see it's slaved right now with my punch. And I'm going to push down on it, pull the punch out, gently allow the hammer to come out, and you can see it's just a small stud. And again, this is another one of those parts where you can see that this part is not intended to come apart because of the way it's constructed. It's hard pressed in there and dressed down and probably finished and everything with that part in place. It's not really designed to be removed. And the way you know that is by turning the part over. You can see a definite spot there where a pin is obviously holding that in place, so it has an axis to pivot on. But on the other side, it's a nice clean fit, and you can tell that they just dressed it down that way. So that's not really intended to come out. So we're going to leave that in place. And then again, looking down in here, we see we've got a cup and a spring. I'm going to see if I can just kind of, all right, look at that. And what do we have? Grease, rust, all kind of nasty stuff. Not good. Needs to be cleaned, okay? Again, on the sear, what we're going to do is see how I just pulled that transfer bar down? And it should just sort of maybe pop out. See if we can get it out. Now this is really the most bearish part to have to deal with on these, is messing with this leaf spring assembly, which literally is just this little spring here. If that's broken, you're gonna have a hard time replacing that. And then dealing with the actual sear itself, which I'm hoping, yeah, there we go. There's your sear. And it's obviously very dirty. It needs to be cleaned, okay? That's basically the frame being stripped minus the trigger bar. We are not going to pull that apart because you're not going to really be able to get it out without driving that pin out, and it is a flush fit fixed pin that is made that way, and we definitely don't want to have to contend with the consequences of trying to get that back together. This little part here moves up and down. It's just a dovetailed assembly, and it's not going to come out unless we remove the trigger, and we're not. So that's the frame pretty much stripped. We're going to clean this thing up and get it back together and test fire it. I think it's pretty safe to say that the malfunctions that we're getting out of this particular firearm are just because of some corrosion and rust and goo and junk that have collected inside the firing pin channel. Once we get this together, I'm going to show you a way that you can check for firing pin, let's just call it authority, to make sure you got a good firing pin. I'll show you a little trick for that. You can do at home or in the gun shop before you purchase a gun like this, and get it together. Let's do it. Okay guys, we got this thing cleaned up pretty good. I'm not going to bore you guys with the details. Basically, we went through and cleaned it really good. I scrubbed the bore out really good. The bore on this particular pistol's I'd say borderline shot out. It doesn't have very strong rifling in it, but it is nice and shiny and clean. We got it pretty clean there, not too bad. We're going to go ahead and put the gun back together, and then I'll show you how we can kind of test a few things. The assembly process on this is not very difficult. If you want to, skip ahead, go ahead. That's cool if you want. But if you're curious to see how this gun goes back together, we're going to go ahead and proceed with that. Yeah, this thing looks great. It cleaned up really good. Just going to take a little LPS and just off camera here, just apply a little bit of that. And guys, the air compressor is going to be going on and off. Just bear with me there. Tell you what, we'll hit this, oh, crap. All right. So we're going to go back with the stud and spring that powers the hammer. You can see this assembly right here basically kind of does like that. All right, that little stud pushes on that cup and compresses the spring, and that's what powers it. We're going to drop it back where it belongs. All right, we've got our little slotted pin right here that holds it in place. We're just going to compress it. And of course, that's easier said than done because it's a real bear. We're going to have to really hold our mouth right here. And guys, it's very, very difficult for me to show you. So you just have to take my word for it. All right, we've got it to interact with it. We're going to compress that. It's probably going to have to be pushed from the top, kind of like this, because we want the level that the hole is at compared to where we're trying to line it up to be the least amount of travel possible. So we'll put the hammer in about this location where my finger is, and we're just going to compress it, push it down. Like that. How about like that? Okay. Line it back up. Kind of play with it a little bit. There we go. All right. That's probably one of the hardest operations for getting this particular gun back together. And then also the the sear is going to be a lot of fun. So let's go ahead and move on to that now. We're going to go ahead and hook the leaf spring back into this little guy down here. There's a little stud, and you can see that this spring has some tension against it, like this. Actually, a lot of tension. To get it to go all the way back, I have to hold it down pretty tight. So I've got to compress this spring, put the sear back in place, line it up, and I've got to get this pin in there. So what we're going to do before we start getting all upset over the sear, we're going to make sure that we know which end of this pin goes in. So I'm just going to test fit it and make sure that it lines up where we want. Let's see. One of these is a fatter end, and it should kind of stop. Well, it must be the spring pressure of the sear pushing against this pin that holds it in place. So it doesn't appear that one end is bigger than the other, so that's fine. That's what I wanted to confirm. All right, we're going to get the sear and put it back in place. The sear goes back in the gun in basically this orientation. Okay, kind of like this. Okay, because this little leg sticking off of the sear is what interacts with the trigger bar that is attached to the trigger. So what we'll do, guys, it's going to be very, very difficult for me to try to show you and to film it at the same time, so just bear with me. I'm going to have to concentrate on what I'm doing here, so if I hold it a little weird, I apologize, but it's going to take a little bit of doing. All right, so I'm going to put that in there. So 1,000,000-handed task here. Okay, going to compress this spring and try to get the sear on top of it, and then we're going to slave it. So just give me a second here, guys. This is the hardest part of this operation, guys, so just give me a second here and I'll get it lined up and I'll come back to you, okay? All right, so it took me a little bit of playing around, but basically, I know this is very hard to see, but I've got the spring compressed and I've got the sear setting on top of the spring with the little leg against the transfer bar where it needs to be. I know that's very difficult for you to see, dare I say impossible, but it's there. All right, I'm just going to take my transfer punch and just sort of compress this thing about where I want it to be. And I'm going to stick my transfer punch in there, line everything up, and there we go. We've got it. We've got our transfer punch with the whole arrangement kind of slaved in there. And what we can do before we go trying to get this pin in, we can actually just test it. All right, make sure that we've got it in there properly. Okay, that is working like we want, so that's good. So now what we'll do is we will back off this slave pin about like this. we'll set the block. You probably can't see, but on the edge of the table, I can probably do it without using the edge of the table, just for demonstrative purposes here. We're going to compress, or basically push the slave pin through. Now guys, bear in mind, I'm doing this in a way that I wouldn't do it. If it was just me and I wasn't filming this, I'd just chalk this up in the vise and knock it out real quick and it wouldn't be a big deal. But basically what you're doing is you're using the slave pin, you're keeping constant pressure against the slave pin, and in theory, and again, I'm not doing this in the way that you technically should do it, because I'm trying to show you. Hopefully this is going to stay together for me. See, I really need to hit this pin, guys, but I don't really have a way to hold the workpiece, so I'm going to move to the edge of the table and do it the way that I normally would do it. You can't see it, but I'm just going to give it a good little hit here. There we go. Okay, I just had to apply a little bit of pressure to it. That's all I needed. And the slave pin came right out, no problem. That's the last task that we'll need the slave pin for. We can see that everything is exactly the way we want it. Okay, we're going to leave the hammer cocked because now we're going to put the safety back in. But first, we got to put our little arrangement back in there. No big deal. Okay, push that back in. All right, so that plunger is what powers our safety. We'll put our safety back in, and it's sort of gonna be a little bit of playing around there. Push the hammer all the way back like this. Okay, so you can see the stop is basically just the pin that holds in the sear just sticks out on this one side that the safety is on, and that is what gives our safety a definitive stop. And then of course the plunger and spring powers the safety and keeps it in a definitive location where you want it to be. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put the mag catch back in the gun. And my mag catch is in the ultrasonic. I'll be right back. Cut this. Okay. Okay, now that we actually have our mag catch, we're going to go ahead and get it back into the gun. I left it in the ultrasonic. I use ultrasonic cleaner for a lot of my stuff. You know, barrels I typically will clean manually, and things like that. You know, small things such as firing pin channels, extractor channels, things of that nature, I'll tend to just clean manually with like Q-tips and things like that. So not a real big deal there. We're going to go ahead and get the mag catch back in place. Again, same arrangement we had before, the way we took it apart. We're going to get it back together the same exact way using a lot of care. We're just going to compress. And it's one of those things that, you know, when they were assembling these guns at the factory originally, they would have had a fixture that they would complete this operation with. We don't have any fancy fixture. We just got to deal with it. I know it's hard to see, but I'm just going to thread it back on there. And remember, I'm having to apply pressure as well. Okay. Just like that. Nothing to it. And I'll tell you what, before we get too much further, we'll just test fit a magazine to make sure everything's good to go there. Okay, good to go on the magazine. We're almost done getting the frame back together. All we've got to do now, let's see, is put the grip panels back on. Okay, that'll be pretty straightforward, and I'll show you something on these grip panels when we get back to the other side. You can tell these screw heads on these grip panels are very wore out where they've been taken on and off. Looks to be quite a bit. Now one thing you'll notice is the pin that holds the sear in place is retained by the right grip panel and by the spring pressure of the leaf spring. So the pin could theoretically fall out this side if that spring were wore out, but it's definitely not going to back through too far over to this side because the grip panel, you can see, covers it and holds it in place. So we'll put the other grip panel back on. Real easy there. And guys, do not get these cross-threaded. The frames on these guns utilize a direct thread type arrangement rather than a bushing. 1911s use a bushing, and the bushings are definitely nice. If they get stripped out, you can just change out the bushing. The screws thread directly into the frame on these guns, so definitely don't want to go messing up those threads. So an old machinist trick that you can do is to apply pressure, back off, reverse it. You'll feel it kind of click once it overcomes that first thread, and then finish her on off. You'll never cross thread a screw again if you do that. Nice. Okay. That looks good. The frame's in pretty nice shape. Functions test. Nice. Cleaned up just fine. All right, we're going to put our slide back together, and then I'm going to show you a couple of little tricks here, and we'll change the camera angle. Earlier, you guys probably noticed that barrel was a little bit difficult to get out. This pin that holds the little barrel bushing assembly in here, the little, I guess, lock pin for the barrel, it started to walk out, and I think that might have been what was contacting in here. So let's see if that barrel slides back in. Look at that. That's all it was. So when I went to remove the barrel, I had to kind of beat it to get it out of there. And I guarantee you that if I would have just went to shoot this gun and not have diagnosed that problem, that we would be getting some malfunctions. But you can see the barrel slides in and out nice and smooth. That's good. So that's just something I wanted to check real quick before we went too much further. Nice fit and finish on this gun. We're going to go ahead and get all the guts back into the back side of the slide. This is super easy. Spring, firing pin, extractor, that should line up. All right, and then we're just going to start that in there, grab a punch, compress it. Don't let it fly out and hit you in the head, because it will. And don't drop your parts all over the table like I just did. Let's take that and sort of, there we go, line that up. And then once I push that in, it should rotate on around. Maybe, if we're lucky. All right, let's see if that'll go together. Just like that. Okay, that looks good. We got good free movement. I don't really expect to see a problem there. I think, honestly, guys, that's really all our problem really was. I think was just the firing pin channel getting full of rust and crap and junk, and just not really allowing it to move freely. And the fact that that pin on the barrel here was walked out a bit and was rubbing against the slide itself. That definitely would have given some reliability issues. And guys, the thing is, this gun's old. It's probably going on 70 years old. So she's an old girl. We'll treat her with some respect and give her a mulligan on that. The parts look to be in pretty good shape. The barrel is shot out pretty good and wore out. But let's go ahead and finish getting her back together here. We'll get our barrel back in place. What am I doing? Saying a Glock. All right, get our barrel back in place. Now here's the easiest way to get any 1911 together. All right. Get your barrel in there. Go ahead and fish your spring in there along with your guide rod, just like this. Go all the way to the rear. Apply the safety. In this case, the hammer will have to be all the way cocked. Apply the safety and allow it to lock the slide to the rear. Okay. You can actually, if you want, sort of just, you'll have to kind of play around with it and just find that spot right there. It should sort of, yeah, just drop right in. You can go ahead and cheat that in if you want. Not going to hurt anything, but apply the safety, because you're going to need to put pressure on this bushing in order to compress it. We'll get the actual barrel bushing back in first. I know I'm working kind of fast here, guys. I'm assuming some of you guys already know about these types of guns pretty well. Actually, it needs to go over to the other side. It's all right. Okay. You guys can see what I'm doing. And then I don't normally have to use the barrel, the bushing assembly tool to get it back in. Just compress it. Well, it's catching my glove, but that's okay. Compress it, and there you go. We'll take the safety off, pull the slide to the rear. That guy in there all the way. Why is she not going in there? There we go. Okay, cool. All right, let's see what we got. Could probably use a new recoil spring. What I'm checking for there is to make sure that the slide will go all the way into battery. If I hold the pistol on its back and relieve a little pressure and then just let it go real slow, it shouldn't do this number. It shouldn't go slow. It should snap back with plenty of force. And then something else I'm going to show you. If you're ever in a gun shop and you want to check the firing pin on a gun, obviously make sure it's unloaded and make sure they'll allow you to do it. Take a pin and drop it down the barrel like this. I'm going to squeeze the trigger, and if our problem has been corrected, this pin should shoot out across the room. All right, ready? Went 15 feet across the room. So I think we've cleared up the problem. We're going to go ahead and test fire the pistol and make sure she works. I'm going to run a little ball through it and let's see how she shoots. All right, guys, thanks for hanging out with us in today's video. We are going to test fire the little Ballester Molina here. And I do want to say one thing. These guns are special to me because this was one of Barry's favorite guns. He loved the Ballester Molina and the Ballester Regard. The Regard was the older version of this pistol, and he was a big fan of that gun. He carried one for quite a while. He loved it. And these guns are special to me for that reason, because Barry loved them, and they're really neat. So we're going to test it out here. Let's see if she works. See if all this work was worth doing. All right. Cool. You got some carry rounds? I got some sodas down there. Thank you very much. Some 230 grain Browning BXPs. Kind of a werewolf bullet, so to speak. Got this kind of weird looking little cross arrangement in there. I don't know if you can see that or not. Very technical shot there. All right, hollow points. See if the little gun will run some hollow points. All right, see if we can bust a soda or two. Yeah, buddy, that's what I'm talking about. Got her figured out. Well, expect a video. Later we'll do a range video on this particular gun. Well, at least it takes 1911 mags, so I can source us a bunch of extra mags, and we'll see just how much this little guy still got left in it. Guys, thanks for watching today's video. We appreciate you very much. Remember, guys, our channel is greatly funded by a lot of our viewers. I mean, you know, folks on Patreon that support us, folks that buy products such as shirts. Over at Forge for Freedom, we've got a bunch of shirt designs. If you want to support the channel and you love these types of videos, consider supporting us somehow. The help is greatly appreciated. Y'all have yourselves a good day. We'll see you next time.